Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today, the man who is thoughts become things, Neo-Positivity. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Say here in the northeastern part of the United States, once again, we are enjoying my favorite time of the year, springtime. It's a time of rejuvenation. It's a time of beautiful weather. It's a time of, wow, all the weather is turning warm. We're going to go to the beaches. We're going to go to the lakes. We'll even go to the mountains. It's a good time of year. I'm loving it. I have guests who are joining us from around the country. Well, first of all, my co-host, Neo. I mean, he hangs out some of the time in Florida, but the rest of the time he's like everywhere else.
I've been traveling a lot.
You've been doing a lot of traveling, quite successfully, I might add.
Thank you. Life is good.
Life is good. It is very good. It's just got a little bit better because we're being joined today by Owen Santos, who, well, first of all, we already saw that he has a surfboard in the background, and he informed us that the Pacific Ocean is about 100 feet in that direction. So it can't get a whole lot better than that, can it? I mean, you got your favorite thing right there. You know, you're looking at it every day. It's a beautiful thing. Owen, welcome to the program. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, Walt. Neil. I'm fantastic. As you mentioned, it's tough to have a bad day when you're this close to the source, man.
Yeah, there you go. Good stuff. So give us a little bit of a background. Tell us how you got to be the life builder.
It's a great question. How it started originally, if we went all the way back, it just started being really sick as a kid. And I think that you have to become an expert at actually doing something before you can teach and train it. And through necessity, at about 10 years old, I had to dive heavily into the fitness aspect, and that led to all sorts of disciplines and habits that eventually led to professional success as well. And now I'm at the point where I wouldn't consider myself an expert by any means at everything that I do, but I grow in it every single day, and I've had a lot of success over the last 10 years. So I'm at the point where I want to teach and train people how to have some of the success that I've experienced.
It's clear that you've left it behind, but what were you dealing with when you were 10?
I was born with severe asthma. So I was actually dealing with it my whole life. I was born on, I guess we'll dive right into it, right?
Sure. We don't waste any time right here. We just go.
Yeah. We'll hit the heavy stuff right away. So I was born on breathing machines. I didn't have a regular childhood. Some of my first memories were, I distinctly remember looking outside the window and watching other kids kick a soccer ball around. And obviously they were running around, and just knowing that I could not do that, because if I ran, I would get out of breath. And if I got out of breath, my lungs would constrict, just like squeezing a straw, essentially. And then I'd have to be rushed to the hospital, put on oxygen, steroids, all sorts of breathing apparatuses and things like that. So long story short, we eventually moved from the East Coast to Arizona to give me a shot at a regular childhood. Because of the dryness and the warm climate, the doctor told my parents I'd have a much better shot. Continued to go to the hospital, but started to slightly get better. And then when I was 10, there was like one of those defining moments, right? And I heard a long time ago, I think it was from an old movie, but when the defining moments come around, they either defined you or you define them. And this was my first memory, or is my first memory of a moment like that. And I asked the doctor, because I'd been seeing the same doctor every time I was rushed to the hospital. So I'm sitting there in the hospital bed on oxygen, tube in my nose. And I asked the doctor, you know, how do I never see you again, doc? Like, how does this never happen to me again? And he looked down on me and just kind of laughed, as, you know, adults tend to do when kids say stupid things. And just had that laugh that was clear that he thought what I was saying was absurd, was preposterous. You know, he said, You'll see me every year. The only way to stop seeing me is if you really stop playing sports, and just essentially resign yourself to your fate, is what he was saying. And then I pressured him for a better answer, and he said the only way you'd never be back here is if you never got sick again. And so at that point, because like a cold or a flu would cause everything that I was going through, so at that point I got out of the hospital. I gave up sugar. I started eating really healthy. I convinced my parents to get me a weight set, like one of those old school benches for Christmas, and I started working out two or three hours a day, and just ate healthy and picked up every piece of knowledge that I possibly could to strengthen my body, and then eventually my mind to not get sick. And that was what started me on my journey.
If you had to pick something, I don't know if you can, you may not be able to, maybe it's just the whole thing holistically, but if you can pick one thing that made the biggest difference, what would it be?
it was just revisiting that cause. That became like a noble cause for me. That you see it all the time in movies like the Rocky movies or Achilles in Troy. Everybody has a very, very noble cause, and that's Hollywood's theme typically with their movies is they have a hero, he has a noble cause, and everybody knows what it is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That became my life. I just revisited proving that doctor wrong, and being able to breathe is a pretty freaking noble cause, right? So it resonated with me daily. I visited it daily, and that cause always outweighed anything in my way, any sort of deterrence that might come up to essentially deter my journey towards being able to breathe and towards being healthy and not going back to the hospital was insignificant compared to the cause that I now had, which was to breathe and to be healthy.
Really interesting, because ultimately that's mindset. That's really what that is.
For sure.
And we talk about that a lot, of course, how important mindset is. But as human beings, we always want to think, well, okay, what actually caused you to get better? I mean, yeah, mindset's one thing, but, it must have been removing the sugar, or it must have been, you did X, you added something to your diet. It's got to be one of those external things.
That's step 2.
Yeah, right. But as your story demonstrates, that isn't necessarily something you can identify, but you can identify the mindset.
Right. The mindset's kind of the overarching theme, right? And that's spurred on the actions that became habits that became what actually ended up building my life.
Yeah.
That's crazy. My little brother and sister, they're twins. And when my stepmom had them, she was 120 pounds. So she ended up having them at 6 months. So They came 3 months early. For the first 3 months of their lives, we never, me and my sister never saw them until after that. And they had the whole asthma and allergic to everything. And I come from a football family. Like everybody's played football. And my little brother, like you, he was just like, nah, I'm tired of these hospital visits. And he just would like work at it and do everything he could to get out of it. And he ended up playing, having a very successful football career, full scholarship in college and all that other stuff. And my little sister, the same, she was pushing through. She took it a little bit longer because she kind of succumbed to the sports aspect of it and visiting the hospital. She had it worse than him, clearly. But funny thing is, we lived in Jersey, piling all that craziness. Was it Albuterol, the stuff,
Albuterol.
Yeah, they moved to Florida, and she's no more meds, no Albuterol, no machine, nebulizer, none of that.
Yeah.
And all they did was move to Florida.
I was born in Jersey. So that's
okay. What part?
I was born in Hackettstown, New Jersey.
Okay, that's like central to north, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was born in Camden. So yeah, that whole area. Do you have any brothers and sisters?
Yep, I have 4 brothers and sisters.
Older?
One older, the rest younger. I was second.
Okay. Yeah, because to be an older sibling and watch, your little brother and sister going through that, it's some painful stuff. Every now and then you get a phone call, hey, come to the hospital. What? Like, and it's just like, it's just one small thing. Right. You're there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely can appreciate that whole story and your whole journey for real. Good stuff.
Thank you, man. It can hit at any time, For me, it was just the sickness, any sort of cold or flu or anything like that. So that's how the tie to health was so clear as far as just staying healthy and dropping the sugar and lifting weights and all that and just trying to be in the best shape possible. I was also a basketball player. I played college basketball, and similar to, your brother, where it was my whole life. So really one of the original intentions wasn't even just the originally started out as not just to live a better life, but I just wanted to play basketball. Not just a ton of food.
That's cool.
That's cool. Dope. Yeah. And to have a dream like that and to turn it into reality in the face of being told you'll never get there, that alone is a big story all by itself. I imagine that kind of became the framework or the base, or however you want to phrase it, that enabled you to become an assistant to others, helping people be, like you describe it, a life builder.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely happened to me. Like I said, every movie has that moment, and every movie also has that bad guy in it. And in my mind's eye, I made that doctor the bad guy. I needed something. I'm sure he was just trying to help me at the time, but I needed something to keep pushing me. And remember that face looking down on me, telling me I couldn't do something, which he was basically telling me I couldn't live a regular life and couldn't breathe like a normal human. That's a pretty heavy driving factor that can get you out of bed pretty early in the morning if you let it.
Yeah. You know what? I wanna pounce on something real quick. Pounce on it. Because the show's called LOA Today. LOA obviously stands for Law of Attraction. And I know people hear this story and they're like, man, that doctor was evil. You know, the doctor shouldn't have said that to you. But, you know, how often were you at the doctor hearing his voice versus that voice?
Right.
You know, you run down the stairs too fast and you're like, whoa, you know, and you're like, oh man, is this another hospital visit? Because that's how my sister was. She would laugh too hard and it would turn into a thing. And so you got your doctor that you see once a week, once every 2 weeks, but then you got that voice that's constantly reminding you. And that's a whole nother beast to get over. You know, I and you, we use the athletic type drill sergeant. You're never going to do it. You're not going to be anything. And we're like, okay, watch this. And we, you know, we use that, to kind of get over that voice. How do you coach people who don't have that competitive side to get over that voice? That's not going to see that as a drill sergeant, something good that can be an extra fire under their butt or a kick in the butt. How do you coach somebody like that on that?
It's a great question, Neo. And there's that old adage of like, you have to find your why, right? Which I believe, I mean, it's true, of course. I believe it's a little overused, especially in the self-development space. You know, you hear it a lot, but everybody's got something. Everybody's got a cause. Everybody's got a husband. Everybody's got a daughter, a brother, a sister, a friend. Like, you just have to, I believe, ask the right questions to help people identify what their actual noble cause is and then help them revisit it consistently. Get their permission. So if I'm coaching you, Neil, we're going to find out what that is. And then I'm going to ask you your permission to consistently hold you accountable to that. Oftentimes you just need to remind that person of what that is, right? Remind that person of why they started, remind that person of why they wanted what they want. Because especially with, you know, some modern age social media or 10,000 advertisements we're seeing every single day, sometimes it's hard to remember that stuff. You know, it's hard to keep that in perspective and it's hard to revisit that regularly. And I think oftentimes as a coach, just asking the right questions to identify it and then asking the permission and doing it tactfully to help and remind that person of that thing. Because I believe genuinely that will have a big enough reason to do great things if you help them find it.
I'm going to put in hashtag accountability partner because that's what that is. And that's what we all need. Everybody find somebody, your spouse, your kids. Find somebody.
So true, man. I always thought growing up as a, you know, wanting to be a badass dude, like many guys grow up, you don't think you need something like that. But the need for a coach, the need for an accountability partner, the need for somebody that help you become better, that cares about that for you is massive. And that took me a long time to figure out. I did that the wrong way for a lot of years, and figuring it out helped me tremendously. And I've seen it help a lot of people that I work with tremendously as well.
You know what?
I'm kind of curious. Who's your first accountability partner?
My first accountability partner. That is a great question. Outside of myself, because that's the easier one, right? I would say my first accountability partner was an partner / mentor of mine, and I really didn't find him until I was 29 years old. I did a lot of things the hard way, again, just thinking I could do it myself. Didn't need anybody. You know, I was going to bang the wall instead of just taking the ladder around it or over it. But, yeah, I was gifted with that at a company I started working with in 2017. And that really opened my eyes to how powerful that can be. Everything I was good at, he helped make it better.
Nice. I was going to ask Walt and you, Owen, I tend to I'm my greatest accountability partner, but then I'm the worst in the sense that I keep falling back into a state of, I don't really need an accountability partner. I got alarms that are going off on my phone. I got Post-it notes, dollar bills hanging up on the wall in certain rooms. And I'm like, I don't really need it, but I do. We all do. Is it just me who every now and then is like, I don't need it. I'm going to come up with my own system.
Not only is it just you, but it's not just you think that. You know what I mean? I realized actually just about 2 years ago, this struck me because I heard something probably 6 or 7 times in my life. And then I heard it an 8th time, and it was from a different voice, and it clicked. Right. So oftentimes we don't just need to hear the way to do something. We need to hear it from the right voice at the right time. And if it's just our voice consistently over and over, it may never resonate with us. It may never help to actually sculpt our life and allow us to implement it the way that it should if it's just our voice.
Well,
it's funny, as you were framing that question, I was thinking to myself, well, right now I have 7 accountability partners. They're co-hosts. And then I have a few hundred other accountability partners. They're listeners.
Right.
You get enough people going like that, and the accountability is coming from everywhere, because you're putting your life out there when you're doing a podcast like this one, and people remind you like, oh yeah, okay, everybody knows about that one. I guess I better do something.
That's such a great point, Paul. I recently dove into, more into the coaching space and more to the social media space, and I make 4 posts every single day. And if I don't make any of those posts, or one of those posts even, not only do I feel guilty about it, but normally one of my followers will call me out. Like, hey man, where were your push-ups? Or, hey man, I noticed you didn't wake up at 5 a.m. It's like, oh crap. I've got a lot of accountability partners now.
Yeah, I'm working on creating something. I switched website providers 3 times in the past 3 months. Basically, it all happened in March. And this latest one I'm on, Go High Level, doesn't have a good interacting with audience section. So I kind of lost my platform to do it, but I might start it back up on my Facebook page and just have like a safe place for, like you said, for someone to say, hey, Neo, it's 4:19. You didn't remind me of anything. And I'm like, well, thanks for reminding me. Have you done your mental check-ins? Have you done your affirmations? And that's it, man. I just want somebody once a day to ask me, have your thoughts been serving you? And if I don't get to you that day, and you don't get to me that day, that's just what it's meant to be. But then we start back over tomorrow. At some point, hit me up. And if you don't hit me up, I'll hit you up. And that's my whole thing. Once is good enough. You don't got to blow my phone up 6 times a day. Although I would appreciate it if you did, because I'm the type of person that's like every thought is either taking food off my dinner table or putting food on my dinner table. So the more you remind me to stay on point, the better it is. So yeah, I'm thinking about putting that together. I don't know how I would structure it, but I'm going to do that.
I love that.
Some more accountability.
Structure, though. Really. Having structure is great. Don't get me wrong. It's a very effective tool. But if you have a circle, perhaps an inner circle or a strong social circle, and that social circle is interacting with you, you don't have to plan it. You don't have to ask. It's going to just come.
Yeah, that's what I got to do. Just post on Facebook. Look, let's do this. # accountability partners.
There you go.
And Neo, tag me in, brother. Tag me in.
Are we Facebook friends?
We're about to be. Let's go.
There it is. I was about to say we about to lock this down.
Give it about an hour. It'll be done.
There we go.
Something else I wanted to ask you about, Owen. Okay, so you gave us the background and told us how you got to where you are and became the life builder. I like the title. But tell us about what you do with your clients, with the people that you mentor, with the people that you help out. What's your approach when you think about, how do I help somebody accomplish their goals using my background?
I try to start with what I have the most experience in, as you mentioned, my background, which is the fitness aspect, right? And I think that I firmly believe that anybody whose body isn't optimized, it's going to be challenging to optimize their life. It's going to be challenging to optimize their mind. So that's the easy place to start. Also, transparently, it's the easy place to show off, right? I have a pretty high level of fitness, and it's easy for me to put that out there and say, hey, I can help you get this. So we start there, and then it's identifying exactly what they're after, what their noble cause is. And for a long time, when I first started coaching people, because I've been in the solar sales space for a long time as well, and I started coaching long before I even launched the business, right? As a regional manager, as a vice president of different various solar companies, I would have a litany of people that I coached at different things, and it was either teaching them how to sell solar at a high level, or teaching them how to, even just show up on time. So the professional skill set and the professional coaching came along with that career, and the physical side started as I mentioned, when I was very, very young. So we usually start with the physical side, and then just based off whatever they're after is what I'm going to help them go get. I don't have a set goal in mind for my people other than to get what they're actually after. So few people, in my opinion, in life right now know exactly what they're after, have a perfectly clear picture of it, and visit it regularly. And I believe that's why we don't get it. I think it was Milet that I first heard say, you know, if we have vague ideas, we're going to get vague results. So I help crystallize what that idea is, and then we build a clear path on how to go get that.
Okay, now that gives me a perfect lead in, because this ties into a theme that we've been addressing all week. And this is not a planned theme. This is not something that I figured on Monday. Okay, this is the theme we're going to do for this week. No, it didn't work out like that. This is just the way it played out. Law of attraction, your law of attraction. But it's the theme of big dreams or big goal setting versus incremental, tiny steps. And I'm kind of curious to know what's your take on that. I mean, I've heard different answers on it. I like all the answers I've heard, but I have a feeling you're going to have a unique take on it. So when you think about those big dreams, like you said, it's important to have that big dream. Where does incrementalism come into it, if at all?
That idea of showing me your habits and I'll show you your future is something I firmly believe in. And the idea of focusing on the process over or focus on the process versus just the destination, the journey versus just the destination. I believe in that as well. But I do believe you have to know where you're going, right? If you just start climbing Mount Everest with no intention to summit it, you're probably not going to summit it. But just because you know that the summit is your intention and your ultimate goal doesn't mean you can't focus on each step by step, right? So for me, the steps are the habits. We clarify that noble cause, that ultimate vision of what the client wants, what each human being wants. And then it's an embrace, just in a factor of how deeply you can embrace the process along the way, right? And that habits that it actually takes to get there, and how much you can enjoy the habits that it takes to get there. My favorite basketball player was Kobe, and RIP. And I started watching him. We were similar ages. I was a couple years behind him, and I started watching him. And at first he was all about the results. You see that for his whole career. And then as his career started to wind down, you could see his shift to be able to focus simply on the process and take pleasure and joy from the process. And to me, that's those habits that it takes, and the actual brilliance of it and the enjoyment of it and the real essence of it for me comes in the enjoyment of the process. And then once you actually reach that goal, I've seen so many people hit what they want and look back and say, I actually enjoyed the process more than I enjoyed the goal, right? Like if you wanted the car, or you wanted the house, or you wanted the certain number in your bank account, it's typically the process and the journey that people look back on, even once they hit the goal. It's not the summit moment, it's the climb.
You're singing Neo's song right now. I don't know if you realize that, but this is the Neo song, right? All about the habit and the process of the habits. You just laid out his whole program.
I told him we're good friends.
Nice. Miley Cyrus, Mountain, I think it's called The Climb. You heard that song?
I have not, but I'm going to listen to it now.
Oh man, what did she say? There's always going to be another mountain. I'm always going to want to make it move. It's always going to be an uphill battle. Sometimes you're going to have to lose. It doesn't matter how fast you get there. It doesn't matter what's waiting on the other side. It's about the climb. And it's crazy because I'm on I think I started it Sunday. Mm-hmm. So, I'm coming up on a week, and this week, anytime my mind says, what are you going to make next week? Or how much is that next job going to pay? Or what affirmation are you going to do to get that job in such and such state? I cut it. I mean, I've been real good at it. I cut it before it even starts. No, I want to appreciate now. And so that's what I do. I always worried about doing this because I'm big on proactive manifesting. I'm big on like every night from midnight till 2 a.m. I'll sit back and just visualize situations. I'll stand up and be walking around, giving my brother some money or signing autographs or taking care of my family or, doing some charity work or being on stage. Like I do a lot of visualization, which I consider proactive manifesting. As long as I'm visualizing it happening now or happening last week. Like, I'm so happy that show went amazing.
Right.
So I'm such a huge fan of that. I never wanted to stop. I'm like, it's fun while I'm doing it. It feels great. I'm watering great seeds. I'm attracting that into my future. So I never wanted to take time off from that. But this week I said, you know what? I'm just going to, anytime I go there, I'm going to pull myself back to what's happening now. You know, I got a check right here on the wall from one of the big shows that I did. If I start to think about next week's show or next month's show, I go to that check and just appreciate that one. And I got to tell you, it's just been a different world. It's been a different world. It's been a different life, and I might not go back. But Walt, I do want to back up a little bit because I really wanted to grab your answer to your ratio because you've done more research in this than I have.
Well, I'm not sure about that part. But okay, what's the question
in the
again?
past 5 days.
Okay.
So you have this ratio of you either shoot for the $10 million or you shoot for $100,000 at a time. I like to do both. Clearly, you know, it's probably better to do both, but one, you're going to do better. Based off of what you guys have been studying the last couple of days, talking about this week on the shows, what have you come up with is the better one to spend more time on?
The person I'm going to draw from actually wasn't on the show this week, but he has expressed this on many occasions in the past. And you know him, Dan Mangena. Dan advocates the whole idea of incrementalism. He wrote a book called Money Game, and Money Game is all about discovering where your mental limits are in terms of how much money you can attract into your life and then learning how to break through those limits. And he does it using an incremental approach. To me, the biggest part of what Dan presents is the idea that we all have this built-in limit that is based on our experiences and our beliefs and so forth, but we aren't really clear what it is. We don't really know in advance. So that's why he advocates the method that he uses for playing that money game. First of all, to find where it is. And that becomes the basis for the incremental approach. Because once you know where that limit is, now you know what you're trying to get past. Now you know what you're trying to break through. And as you approach that limit, you realize you're hitting up against it. Now you can say, okay, my increments, if your limit is, say, I don't know, $500, doesn't matter what it is. So if your limit is $500, okay, now you got to work in $500 increments. That's where your increment range is a $500 range.
Oh, that's dope. I like that.
It may change a month from now, but right now, that's where it is. So what's it going to take for you to get past that one right now? And he has a very specific method for doing that.
I got to get his book. I love Dan to death. That's my guy. He co-hosted one of my Law of Attraction summits. But I'm not a big reader, and it's not an audiobook, so I don't know the techniques.
He does have that. Yeah. Oh, no, actually, I think he does have that in an audiobook now.
If he does, I'm getting on it because I think it was February. I was really trying to get through some money blocks, you know, from childhood, growing up in the hood. You know, it was very scarce. It was a super scarcity mindset. And my dad still operates in that mindset. So when I bring some ideas to him, he's still reinforcing it in my head. Being my hero, he raised me my whole life. You know, he has a really tight, firm grip on what's going on as far as my thought foundations. And so I was trying to get over these money blocks and I asked myself, what's my limit? And so I would say a number like I have this or I can spend this. And if it felt good, I'd bump up. If it felt good, I'd go up another $100. And I kept doing that until I got to a point where when I said it, the ego stepped up and did what it did and punched me in my stomach and said, nope, that's not happening. And I said, that's the limit. Right. That's right where I'm at. And so I've been trying to push through or raise the roof of that because I read this book that talked about this gap of money, the money you'll never have less than in your mind and the money block that you haven't really been over. And you kind of stay in that gap. And that tends to be the amount of money we make. We don't go below it and we don't go above it. And moving that gap up in increments is kind of the whole gist of that. So I'm going to have to get with Dan. Hashtag Dan Mangena.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this here.
This is something that it didn't really come up during conversation this week. I don't think. Maybe it might have on Tuesday. Not sure. But it to me is a big part of the conversation because the way I framed it was, well, is it incrementalism or is it a big goal? Which is really kind of an artificial constraint. Quite honestly, it really is. What actually tends to happen is much more vibrant than that, much more random, perhaps is another word, a little bit chaotic. And to give you an example of it, when I went through Dan has a very specific process in his book, Money Game. I went through his process. And, you know, for the first few rounds, it was pretty predictable the way that he laid it out. And then I reached a limit and I broke through a limit. And then from that point on, the whole incremental thing kind of fell apart in that, you know, maybe, and I'm just going to pick these numbers out of there. Maybe, one limit was $250. The next limit was $500. The next limit was $1,000. And then the next limit was $33,000. And I slipped down to $600. And then I jumped up to $5,000.
Situation.
So yeah, the situations shift, and you have to kind of be okay with, it doesn't have to follow a one by one perfect one step after another plan. It can be 2 steps forward and a step back. It's not a big deal.
That's life, baby. Nothing in life follows that damn path, straight line.
I had one of those recently. I mean, Neil, I went through a divorce recently. I was divorced in February after a 23-year marriage, and it was a complete surprise to me. And among other things, it affected every area of my life, including my income, because my income was tied in with my ex. And I was still trying to figure out, okay, what's my new income stream, because she was taking that with her. And then a month after we got divorced, she told me she was shutting down that other income stream. Long story short, I ended up buying it from her. I just landed out, and I was not planning this at all. I was not trying to attract it. It was not on a vision board. It was not on my radar in any way. And suddenly I had a new income stream fall on my lap. Now, how do I price that income stream? Oh, God, just 6 figures. I don't know. It's going to be an annual thing, so I can't just put a single number to it. But where was I before that? I was probably around a $1,000 to $2,000 limit. So again, it illustrates you can't just kind of lock into it's going to be incremental or it's going to be a big goal. It's going to be whatever it is. The whole point of big goal or incrementalism is to help you reshape the way you're thinking about it. And that's the part that matters. It doesn't matter so much what the result is. What matters is how you're thinking about it.
That's what I'm saying. Start with a number, then a little knot in your chest. If you lie to yourself or you feel sad, that knot that goes down and it goes up when you feel happy. That knot in your chest. Say a number to yourself. If it goes down, drop the number until you can say that number and it doesn't go down. It just feels okay. And then let that be it. Because when you notice that knot drop down, the ego is coming fast to say, no, not yet. No, you haven't done that. I can prove it to you. Here's your bank statement right here. And with all its proof and all its glory, it's coming fast and it's gonna take your legs out from under you. So I like to use that knot. But man, I can't wait to get into Dan's book now.
Yeah, Dan's book is really good. I recommend it to you.
Well, you said it was called Money Game. I'll check that out as well.
Yeah, Money Game. It's called Money Game. And there's a free version of it. It was available on the LOA Today app, but the app is broken, so I can't really give it to you that way. But he does have a free version of it in many places, and I'm pretty sure you can get it on Amazon. There is an Audible version of it.
Oh, and you got anything for money blocks?
Read Money Game. I think it's a huge piece, man, especially when you start talking about building lives, right? You can build the body, you can build up the mind, you can build up even the skill set. But I learned a long time ago that it was the first time that I was trying to make $300,000 in a year. I was 26 years old, and I told my leader at the time, this is what I want to make. And he said, well, if you want to make that money, because I'd never broken that, he said, you have to understand that you might have been doing $300,000 worth of work last year, but you didn't have $300,000 worth of skills. So I believe in everything Walt's talking about. I believe in everything you guys are talking about as far as the actual mental blocks of it. You also have to have $300,000 worth of skills and do $300,000 worth of work. And tie all three of those components together, you might not even get it that first year. But if you have that resiliency and that addiction to the process and the correct habits, then I do believe you can get there. And that's how, because I've had them. I grew up in a lower middle class family as well. And it was actually after that year, after I hit that mark, I was pacified for a year, and the next year it didn't change that much. It went up a little bit, but then I floated around that area for a while until I realized I was blocked and had to dive into how to get past that, as well as, again, acquiring more skills and doing more work, not necessarily working more, but getting more done. Having a higher level output than I had at the $300,000 level was the only way I was able to progress to the next level.
Like that. I'm writing that down. Working more versus getting work done.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a distinct difference, right? I think it's Alex Hormozi talks about this all the time, and he's probably the most famous one talking about it right now. But just the difference between input and actually what comes out on the other side as far as output goes, right? There's plenty of people that work 8 to 10 hours a day, and growing up in middle lower class, oftentimes that's a badge of honor, right? So for money blocks at 8 to 10 hours a day, working hard is a badge of honor. It's a beautiful thing. And it's even almost hard for me to talk about right now and say it's not, because it's so ingrained in my soul that like, if you work hard, that's all that matters. Right. But there's a difference between working hard and having like an average output and then getting an average income versus working hard and having a world-class output that leads to a world-class income. And it doesn't have to be time. It's not a function of time. It's a function of actual value delivered.
You know what's a sucky template I've been trying to get rid of is that, you know, you work 40 hours a week, whatever, but then the overtime. Mm-hmm. And that's the template. If you work a little bit more than your 40 hours, you'll get a little bit more money. That is the opposite that you want to be thinking. If you're, you know, trying to manifest big things into your life, you have to dream big. And I love it because I did one-on-one sessions for a while and I made good money doing that. But going to speak for a crowd, it's the same 1 hour amount of time, but I'm getting so much more work done because I'm touching thousands of minds.
100%.
And then that's echoing out to thousands of people versus one person echoing out to his family, maybe a couple of coworkers. So I love that so much. Working hard versus getting work done. I love that.
I learned a long time ago that it's far better to give your absolute best 35 to 40 hours a week than just a hard work in 60 hours. Right? And I hire people all the time still in the solar space. And I tell everybody, we're not going to ask you to work 60 hours a week, but we will ask you for your best 35. And I believe we can get more out of you in your best 35 than we'll ever get in 60 hours every week.
100%.
It's funny how we have, as a culture, we have built up this idea that our wealth has to be tied to hours. I think you illustrated it very nicely when you described that mindset. You know, you got to work that 8 to 10 hour day and so forth. Because that was certainly the way I was brought up.
For sure.
I ran into the challenges associated with it, though. It's actually what led me to create this podcast because I've been self-employed part-time since 1995, full-time since 2002. And when the 2008 financial crisis came along, my business got wiped out completely in one stroke. It had nothing to do with mortgages or real estate, but my business had to do with providing web services to very small local nonprofit organizations. And no one gives money to a nonprofit during a financial crisis, so all my clients disappeared, which was terrifying. Let me tell you, because your income just disappeared off the face of the earth. And then I spent the next 4 years trying to figure out, well, what do I do here? And I kept doing what I've been taught to do. I kept working hard, long hours, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. I was actually losing ground. I was going deeper into debt. It was getting worse and worse. And I said, there's something wrong with this formula. I don't know what it is. So I had seen the movie The Secret. I didn't totally grasp it because a lot of it contained that woo-woo stuff that I thought was a bunch of nonsense. But I figured at this point, I got nothing to lose. I got to learn more about this, but I don't understand it. So I started a podcast I could bring experts on to teach me about it. And that's how it worked. Now, what I did learn along the way and what I've since learned while doing this podcast for the last 10 plus years is that it isn't so much whether you're putting the long hours in. It's whether you're putting whatever hours, it doesn't matter really so much what the number of hours is. It's you're putting in the hours, but you're doing it with a mindset that is consistent and congruent with where you're trying to get to. Because if it's easy. This is what I was doing. It's easy to put in those, well, easy is perhaps not a word. It is possible to put in those kinds of hours and do it with the wrong mindset. And you just run yourself into the ground. That's
right.
It's more than possible. That's 90% of the time of 90% of the population is doing that.
Right? Yeah. And where I'm at right now, I've actually learned how to manifest this new income stream where I'm working literally 5 to 10 hours a week on it. I mean, the ratio just doesn't fit the way I was originally taught. But now that I understand, it really doesn't have a lot to do with the number of hours. It has to do with taking the action steps in congruence with the mindset. That message has really come home to me in a way that 10 years ago I couldn't even conceive of.
All right, time out, because now I see a huge problem that all three of us have that we might be able to brainstorm and find a way to fix.
All right.
Because Walt just gave an example, and Owen said it earlier, and I said it earlier, that we are blowing out our old mindsets. We're proving it now in our current lives that those aren't the way to be. Yet they're so deeply embedded that they're part of our thought foundations. You know, we like, I would love to just get rid of that. Get rid of all those, oh, you have to work an extra couple hours a week to get a little bit of extra money. And because there's so many hours in a week, you'll never be able to get a lot of money. That's what that equates to at the end of the day. So how do we shake these old narratives? How do we get them officially out of our system to where it's just not a part of us anymore? Because it's possible. People have done it. Every rags to riches story, I believe, because of the law of attraction. There you go. That being, I don't know what that was, but that was divine intervention. I believe
I'll tell you something that'll tie it beautifully. That came, that is a text message that just arrived from an employee of mine from last year who wants to come back to work in order to help build this business that came out of nowhere and landed in my lap.
Nice.
Right when I said every rags to riches story. Walt, you're about to be rich. That's a sign right there. But no, I believe, you know, that person in that rags to riches story had to have that transition in their mindset to where they're not thinking with what I would call, you know, broke back thought foundations. So how do we wipe those things out? Or maybe even not for good, because it might not even be possible, but work at reducing the frequency of that egoic voice.
I can tell you my answer, but I don't think I have the final answer. I'll tell you what has worked for me. This is where the incrementalism comes in. You go at it one little piece at a time. Try to make one improvement here, one improvement there, another one over here. And you just do that persistently. And you take 2 steps forward and 3 steps backward and 4 steps forward and 2 steps back. You just go through all this stuff where half the time it feels like you're not getting anywhere, but you just keep incrementally, just chipping away at it. Chip away, chip away, chip away. And over time, what I have done is I've chipped away at that belief system about the number of hours it takes to have money come in. And now all of a sudden I kind of look at it like, oh, how did I get to 5 to 10 hours a week? But I did. And I do know how I got there, but there's just the piece of me that says, wow, that's pretty amazing.
I love that dance. You made me think of dancing. 2 steps forward and 2 steps back and forth. Mm-hmm. If you were with your soulmate, taking 4 steps forward and 2 steps back and 2 steps forward and 2 steps, you'd be enjoying yourself.
Yeah, true.
But you're in life taking those steps and you're like, oh, what the hell? Why can't I get to that next level? It's just like another, like, stay present and appreciate what's happening.
Well, that's just it. Sometimes I do succeed in enjoying it.
See,
that's part of the key right there, right? You just identified it. If you're feeling good about what you're doing, it's easy to keep taking those steps. Even if there's 2 steps back at a time. Who cares? It's part of the dance.
See it as a dance, not as a race with a finish line 100 meters up.
Yeah.
You know, it's a dance. Owen, what you got for us, man?
I agree with everything Will said, and I would add to it that for me, I had to create a highlight reel, and I'm still working through this, right? I think that very few people are exactly what they want to be financially, and I have massive financial aspirations, so I'll probably work on it for the rest of my life. But this was something I really struggled with, and to get past anything, I need an irrefutable body of evidence, right? So if I'm trying to understand how I can earn more in a shorter amount of time, I need to produce world-class hours, have a world-class hour here, have a world-class hour here, have a world-class day where I did a week's worth of work in a day. And then I just start to stack that irrefutable evidence. Because I'm a logical guy. Most of us are. Right. So when I look back and those old demons come in like, oh, you got to put in the 50-hour work week to have worked hard and be a good man. Then I can look at that irrefutable stack of evidence. Essentially the highlight reel of over the last 6 hours, I just did a week's worth of work. Right. So it's just putting together that actual combination of short time and extremely high output, and remembering you can't forget about it when it happens, right? Whether you got to shoot a short video of yourself or write it down or journal it, pick your poison or whatever it is that you do with that. But you got to be able to remember that highlight reel and visit it when you start to get tugged back by those low class limiting beliefs around money, especially.
Marinate on your highlights right here. One of my first checks. It was $500 for 1 hour of speaking.
Nice.
You hear that? Yeah, it's laminated. It's laminated. I'm never going to lose it. And it's right here on my wall every day for me to look at. If I ever have that moment, got to marinate on your highlights. I'm such a huge fan of marinating on highlights.
Funny thing is, it doesn't even matter how many hours you're talking about. What matters is how you feel about it. Mm-hmm. So if you feel good about 50 hours, that's good. Because you feel good about it, not because it's 50 hours, because you feel good.
Right. And it helps if you have the result to tie back to it, right? I saw when Instagram sold those blue check marks to everybody, I think they said they made something like $600 million in like 5 hours.
Yeah.
You made a lot of people happy. You know, I mean, everybody's blue check mark, all happy about it. Congratulations. You clicked a button and made 600 million in an hour, a couple hours. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's an interesting side piece that goes with that point that you just made. And I'll tie in a story from one of my other co-hosts, Joel Elston, who has returned to the show. Thankfully, he was one of my earliest co-hosts. He came back for the first time about a month ago, and I'm loving having him back. But he once told me a story about he's a former therapist, currently a life coach, with a really traumatic background that he really leverages to his advantage in working with his clients. But he had this one client who was multi-billionaire actually, and he's in conversation with him, and he's I don't even remember what they were talking about, but at one point the client, I guess, brushed some papers on his desk or something while they're talking. I guess they're on a video call, and the client says, "Oops, I forgot about that one." And Joel says, I don't remember why the context said that this was a good thing to do, but he said, "What is it you just forgot about?" And the guy says, "Oh, I've got a $17 million dividend check I forgot about." Like, what? But that shows where mindset is it. And in his case, that amount of money was nothing. It didn't mean anything to him because he was so well off financially. So you might be wondering, well, why was he working with Joel? It wasn't about money. His problem was with relationships.
Yep.
So even when we get something like that resolved, we still have other stuff that we're still working on. That's what makes it a truly lifelong learning process. Because even if we get one or two of these things down, there are still many other things we can learn. So many other things we can be building on, working on, develop. I mean, right now, you know what my biggest thing is right now? It's health stuff. I'm not even sick. But right now, I have this orientation toward, I just want to work on the health side. There's things that I can improve on there.
That's awesome. That's huge. Proactively handling health issues before it comes. Yeah. I don't eat exactly healthy. You know, I'll have burgers and stuff like everybody else. However, every day I do make sure I get in beets, spinach, blueberries, you know, some blackberries. Like my smoothie is legit, you know, so my breakfast is good. I always have a jam-packed smoothie with a bunch of quote unquote superfoods in it. And then dinner is up in the air, you know, trying to do some kind of chicken, you know, trying to stay a little bit healthy. A preemptive strike. I do want to ask you guys this too, and I'm super curious if this is just me. It happens with tax returns, and now I'm discovering any checks that come in the mail. When the person tells me the check is in the mail, it's like I cannot rest until it's cashed. Like I like there's something in me that's like something's gonna happen, it's gonna get reversed or something. It's like I don't believe it until it's true. And I don't like that. Like being on, I was a cop for all those years. It was direct deposit. I haven't got a check mailed to me. You know, that's just not what I'm used to. So now that I'm getting checks, and it happened, I notice it every year with tax returns, because once they tell me the number, I'm like, cool. And they're like, all right, it'll be here in 3 weeks. And I'm like, all right, let's see if it makes it. That's my mentality. See if it makes it. Is it just me? Or do you guys experience that too?
I'll throw you the opposite, Neo. When I know the check is in the mail, or even if the check is there, I discount it at that point. I found myself, and this is really when I was struggling to get past that middle lower class mindset, I found myself almost not depositing it because something subconsciously in me didn't want to see more money in my account. Like once I knew it was good and I had it, I didn't actually give myself access to it because somewhere subconsciously I was resistant to seeing the numbers in my account grow up.
Wow.
Isn't that weird? It's wild, right?
I never even thought about that. It does make sense though. That's that bracket. Well, you feel any of this?
I think the answer to your question is yes. And the reason the answer to your question is yes, and that it's yes if you ask it of, say, 95% of the population.
Okay.
The reason I know it's yes is because of where their bank accounts are at.
Right.
And that included mine. And still includes mine in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is, how do I know whether or not I have a mindset issue like that? Well, how much money do I have? If I've got all the money I need, I don't have the mindset issue. If I feel like that I'm short on where I want to be, guess what? I got a mindset issue going on. It's just, one leads to the other.
Yeah, because it's crazy. I've never had a bounce check. I've never had a check get lost or returned or whatever. And it's still like, as soon as I find out it's coming, it's like, all right, I'm not counting it until it's here. And I'm like, I'm checking my mailbox every day. I don't never check the mailbox. If my kids don't check it, that thing will get full. Now I'm checking it every day, waiting for these damn checks. And then they don't show up because I'm manifesting a delay in the process. And I didn't know if it was, I never ever asked anybody if it was just me or not, but I'm glad to hear that everybody's, with those money blocks has got that worry going on too.
I can tell you something else, and that is it changes over time. Like, for instance,
I'm waiting for that
question 10 years ago when I was in the depths of despair, deep in debt, businesses crashed, couldn't recover, all that kind of stuff. I probably would have given a very similar answer to the one that you gave. Today, well, partly because of the business that I run, we're getting checks all the time. It's an old style way of collecting because of the customer base that we have. So I now expect the checks to come in. Nice. And when they come in, I knew that was coming. It had to be. It was going to be there, and there it is. The thing that I'm working on right now with it is doing more to appreciate it. So, for instance, I have somebody who does our estimating for it. So she's the one who basically is, in a sense, selling it. She's not really a salesperson, but in a sense she is. And she gets the order in, and then we get a prepayment and so forth. And I get that prepayment check, and then I send her a note saying, yeah, way to land that, Rita.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's my way to take that next step. It's always about what's the next step? What's the next thing you can do to get yourself a little bit closer to that ideal place you want to be at?
And you're using collective energy. You're getting somebody else's thoughts and emotions, which means energy involved in the situation. So that's dope. Maximizing.
Yeah.
I love that. Collective energy is a beast.
And it's always looking for it too. I think that's part of the persistence. I mean, Owen, when you were starting off, you're 10 years old, you're dealing with this massive asthma problem. You were always looking for what's the next thing I can do. So you chose to change your daily routine. You chose a number of steps that you took. And you didn't know which one was going to work or if any of them were going to work. But you just kept trying. What's the next one I can find? Where's the next step I can take? What's the next thing I can go? Right?
Yeah, it's that beautiful balance of being really excited about where you're at, but not content enough to rest on your haunches forever, but still being able to enjoy the present, enjoy the moment while still looking for that next step of evolution.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I saw a reel earlier popped up on my Instagram, and a guy, he was comparing 3 like billionaires or whatever. And he was like, notice how often they change. And he broke it down. He said, there's some people that change every 5 or 10 years. You notice them in their same patterns. There's some people that change once a year and they do cool, but once they get that success, they fall back into their same patterns. But when you look at the really successful people, they're looking for and they change every couple months. They're flipping something completely. And I'm like, yeah, it's me. I'm always, optimizing. I'm looking for a better way to do this. And if I got to not sacrifice, but change everything, then I'm a huge fan of saying this. If you made $100,000 this year, if you want to make 101 next year, something has to change. For sure. If you want to make 200,000 next year, everything might have to change. So I'm a fan of it. I'm a huge fan of that. And that speaks exactly what you said. You have to be, when you have a passion for something, you're not going to quit. You're going to look for ways to make it work. And look for ways to make it work is exactly that. Change. The only thing constant is change. So everybody's stagnancy, sitting in your comfort zone at home every day like I was doing for years. Like, I'm retired. I ain't got to go nowhere to do that. Let me relax. Stagnant like mud. It was just stagnant. Start changing stuff up, going places, doing things. Now I'm exploding. First big change, moved to Florida. That changed everything. And then I just been an open book to the opportunities the universe has presented to me to get out of my comfort zone and go to these shows and meet these people and blow their heads off and speak at all these crazy places. So yeah, change.
Well, we were meant to evolve, right? And if we put ourselves in the situation to do so, like, our biological program is going to take over. We're going to evolve. We're going to grow. But like you said, when you're sitting at home, we don't have the opportunity to let our bodies and our minds do the work that they were made to do. And putting ourselves in that situation allows that to happen. And it's been it was one of my biggest weaknesses when I first started out, is I'd get to a certain level and I'd be comfortable because that level was pretty high, especially compared to where I came from, compared to the people around me. It was pretty high. And then realizing that I had to instantly recalibrate and also have some sort of driving overarching cause that I'll probably never catch, that will always help me recalibrate and always help me go chase something, was transformative for me for sure.
We kind of touched on this earlier, and I want to revisit it before we're done with the show today. Owen, I wanted to ask you about this specifically. As you've gone through your life, as you've basically taken all these steps forward, a step backward, the next thing I'm going to go after, and so forth. To what extent have you found that how you feel about it makes a difference? In other words, is it important that it be a passion? Is it important that it be something that you really just can't get enough doing? How important is that?
In reference to high performance on a specific activity, or like each individual activity, are you asking, Walt, or just in general?
It's open-ended. You get to answer it whichever way makes sense to you.
I do believe it's important. I don't believe it's necessary. Meaning and I have one, right? I have this overarching purpose of catching the man I was supposed to be, the husband I was supposed to be, the father I was supposed to be, actually catching that person. And at some point knowing that I became everything that I was supposed to be. And I'm incredibly passionate about that. So no matter what level I hit on the way up, I'll always have that massive reason that's driving me forward and pushing me forward. So I do believe that passion is important, but that's who I am. And oftentimes who I am can trump my feelings. So focusing on, it's great when you feel good about things. I love chasing passions, but sometimes we have to do things we're not passionate about. Like, I'm not passionate about waking up at 5 a.m. every single day. I don't know if anybody is, right? But I'm passionate about catching that person. So the passion is important for the long-term vision, I believe. And that's the driving reason. That passion provides that driving reason to do all those little things. But having passion about eating, healthy, waking up early, doing the mindset training, doing the meditation, going to the gym every single day. I've been lifting weights for 25 years. Like, I can't say I'm passionate about lifting weights every single day, but I am passionate about catching that person that I'm supposed to be. So if my feelings don't necessarily align to get me to the gym that day, that doesn't matter to me, because my feelings allow me to be so passionate about that overarching cause, which is what's always going to drive me forward.
How about you, Neil? What's your take on that same question?
I love what he said. I want to adapt that.
Yeah.
Right? Because, my biggest thing is getting up and movement, throughout the day, as opposed to just sitting at this desk and handling emails. I'm 42 years old. That stuff starts to hurt your back. You sit at the desk too many hours a day, you're going to be screwed for the next couple of days. So getting up and doing the exercises that I used to do, I've never been that guy. I used to try to skip the weight room. You know what I mean? When we had football practice, they made us hit the weight room. I used to be the guy joking around, but I was scoring a touchdown. So I was like, all right, I don't have to hit the weight room. So now that I'm older and I have to do these things, I'm not passionate at all. I don't want to do them, but this is a great driving force because there is a version of me that I want to be, that is more healthier, more fit, and can, got some cardio. That heart muscle, like I work out all my muscles and I'm doing great, but I don't work my heart muscle as far as like cardio and stuff like that. So I need to step it up, and I like that. I'm going to use that as my my driving force. See how that works out.
We are running out of time, but Owen, before we go, we got to get some info from you, because there's probably somebody listening who's saying, I got to find out more about what this guy Owen does here. So if somebody wants to reach out, they want to learn more about your mentoring or coaching program or whatever, what can you tell them?
What can I tell them is just have a conversation with me. Reach out to me on Instagram. It's Owen Santos with an underscore at the end. And my intention and what I believe is what I'm building my expertise in is helping people get what they want. And that's my number one driving intention in business. And I have that very, very clearly in line or in my mind, essentially, for myself as well. And so it's something that I'm striving towards daily for myself and coming closer and closer to it every single day. And the more people I can bring along with me to help actually build their lives towards exactly what they want it to be, the more rewarding it is for me personally. So a lot of the coaching business, guys, is it's not popular to say, but it's selfish, not in the sense that I want to just make money off it, but because it's the way that I felt better than doing anything else in my life. It's actually helping and seeing people. And I've worked with a lot of people over the last 5-10 years where I've tangibly helped them build up, and they have to do the work. I just show them how and encourage them along the way. But to get there together, to look left and to look right and know that I've got people on both sides that I've helped build their life, while mine as well, has been the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done in my professional life. And it's something that I believe I've got the fuel and the drive to do for a very long time to come. So if you have any questions, reach out. I'd love to help you get what you want. That's what I'm all about.
And how do they find you on Instagram? What's the handle?
Owen Santos with an underscore at the end.
All right, there we go. And we'll put that into the show notes too, so that makes it easier for people to find it. But Owen, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your insight, sharing your story. And as Neil knows, I always like to wrap up with one important thing, because you are a giver. That's how you end up on this show. Givers do a lot of giving. I mean, you put out content, you appear on podcasts, you're just doing all this stuff, and a lot of it gets consumed by people you've never met, you'll never see. And that's a good thing. That's part of what you're doing, but you also deserve some recognition for that. So on behalf of those people you've never met and that you've never seen, thank you for what you've been putting out there, what you're doing, because you are making a difference in this life.
Well, Neil, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys as well. Thank you for the value that you had to my life today. I'm definitely going to retain every bit of it that I can. I'll watch the episode. And Neil, if you start accountability group, man, tag me in.
I'm on it. As soon as I'm done here, I'm going to get on that, because I'm late. I should have been doing this.
Let's go.
And Neil, you final word. You know what that final word is every week.
Shout out to my military and first responders, man. We love you guys. Keep us safe.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.